Hey everyone, it's the host of All Across America, Marco Vig, jumping in for a few seconds before the show to thank y'all for listening, to let you know that I want to hear from you. Tell me what you like about the show, and send me your suggestions too. Follow us on Instagram at AllXAmerica, or visit the website, allacrossamerica.net, and you can use our contact page there. If you want to support us, we're on Patreon at patreon.com/allacrossamerica. Try to respond personally to everyone who reaches out, so say hello. All right, on with the show. Podcasting from Portland East to Portland West, from Big Pine Key to Pacific Beach, and from San Juan to Guam, this is All Across America. You know, we're talking about you traveling on the open road, so if you can't be open in conversation, It doesn't work, you know? So at least from my perspective.
Right.
So,
yeah, cool.
Well, hey, wanted to start with, I guess, with the most basic question is, you know, I'm a four-wheel. Most people are four-wheel guys. You know, a car, you've got the rear axle and the front axle. So what got you into two wheels initially?
So I actually when I was like 8 years old, my father got me a mini bike, and I loved riding it. Yeah, somewhere around there, like 7 or 8, I'd say. He got me a mini bike, and I loved riding it. But then one time, my sister took it for a ride, and we whiskey throttled it. I don't know if you're familiar with that term.
What does that mean?
But she just held the throttle down and pinned it.
Oh, okay.
So like she didn't let up on the throttle, and she went like barreling into like a brushy, woodsy area. Didn't get hurt, but like fell down, and I was like, at that moment, I was like, wow, motorcycles are cool. So I was like kind of hooked. I was like, I like the little danger aspect about them. And I don't know, ever since.
Did she feel the opposite thing? Was she like, I'm never going on a motorcycle again? Or
well, I've got 3 sisters, and she's been on bikes with me before, but I don't think she cares either way.
Yeah.
And she's been on other like little pit bikes I've had and stuff. And I think another time she had a similar experience in like our older years, which is kind of funny now thinking about it. But yeah, I don't think I don't know if she really remembers it, because at that time, if I was 7, she was like, I must have been 8, because she would have been 6 or something. I don't know. So yeah.
I got a 6-year-old, and I could not imagine putting him on a motorbike. I mean, he's still getting the regular bike down. So pretty bold to your dad. I respect it.
Yeah, you know, I had a helmet. We had a helmet on and all that, and I don't know, but I've been always into like stuff like that. So I guess he probably didn't surprise him. You know what I mean?
Right. Fair enough. Yeah. And when did you get like your first bike that was yours, and you know really started getting into it?
That's a funny story too. So when I was 16, I went to my dad. I'm like, oh, Dad, I want to get a motorcycle after I got my driver's license. He's like, no way, too dangerous. I'm like, you just brought me up on dirt bikes, and now it's an end to this. Right. And he was so against it. He was so against it that I actually bought a bike with a friend of mine. We went halves on it, and we just kept it at his house, and he didn't know about it.
Wow.
And like, even like one day he'd show up on the bike at my house. I was like, oh, Dad, I own half that bike. He's like, you don't. And I was like, okay, whatever. And I had a good relationship with my father, but I guess, you know, it's just one of those things. And then finally, I think I was like 22, and I was working at Harley Davidson.
Okay.
And I'm like, Dad, I'm buying a bike. When are you going to stop, whatever. And I bought my first Harley when I was there. But even when I wasn't allowed to ride bikes, I was still working on them, which was kind of funny.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So you,
I love motorcycles.
So first of all, I got to ask, so you split a bike with somebody. Usually that doesn't go so well in the end. Like, who got, you didn't take a Sawzall and cut the bike in half. I guess somebody got the full bike at some point.
It actually, oddly enough, it worked fine, because like I was so limited when I could ride it, right? Because of my father. And I was in a car too. I have a Trans Am that I have had since high school. I've kept the same car, as a toy. And so I was into other stuff, and it was just another thing. And then I went to college, and my buddy did something else, and he's like, you want to sell the bike? I was like, sure. And then we split it, and whatever. Kind of funny story though, this spring, not that I love that bike. It was an 87 CBR 1000 Hurricane. Very fast, did not handle, did not brake well.
Okay.
And I actually
Trouble
found
coming.
that bike. Yeah, I found the same exact bike on Craigslist this spring in a
Right.
storage unit. It was in storage for like 30 years, and I bought it because it was cheap enough just to be like, oh, that's my first bike.
Oh, that's
Like
cool.
same color and everything. Not that it's a cool, not in my opinion, it's not really that cool of a bike,
Right.
but it's kind of cool to just be like, I sat on it when I bought it, and it was like brought you right back to 16, staring at those same set of gauges. It was like,
Wow.
it was
Okay.
really funny. It was
I
cool
mean,
feeling. I
is
still
it
got it, yeah.
is it still a little hard to handle?
I haven't got it running yet. It's a project.
Oh, okay.
Believe it or not, I own 38 bikes in my collection.
38. Where do you keep them?
I own a commercial garage with shelving,
That
so
helps.
most of them are there. And
Okay.
then I got a couple other little storage sheds.
Yeah.
But I like to collect bikes. I got a dream someday to open a bar/restaurant and put them all on display.
Oh,
Most of
wow.
them are antique. Yeah, most of them are antique and vintage bikes. So
Okay. So,
yeah.
I guess they're all different. You worked at Harley Davidson. Maybe we could get into there, and then how you expanded beyond that, because I think now you're riding mostly Japanese bikes.
Yeah, so everybody wants a Harley in the beginning. My daily rider now is a BMW, but I don't know. I like all bikes. It's it's like women. You can love them and hate them all at the same
All right.
time.
All right. All right. So, what was your
Something like
experience
that.
You worked at Harley at one of the stores, not at
Yeah,
the.
actually, I was in college and it was a local Harley dealer in my town,
Okay.
high octane Harley Davidson.
Okay.
Actually, it used to be Kelly's back then. I started out in the wash bay, and
Wow.
they seen how much I loved bikes, and they like promoted me to a service rider within a couple months.
Wow.
And then I was there for about a year and a half, 2 years, and different management came in, and then kind of just washed every. You know how the story
Look,
goes, and
I've been through that. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So, but it was a great experience. I learned a lot, so I loved it.
So, what do you mean by service rider?
So a service writer is your first initial contact with a customer.
Oh, okay.
It's like the person that's in between the customer and the mechanic, because the
Got
mechanics don't want to talk to the customers.
Yeah. Yeah. You were the front of the
So
house guy.
yeah, which I like that because I like people in general too. So
Fair enough. Yeah, the mechanics are different breed, I guess. But sounds like
yeah, some of them.
I mean, you're pretty handy yourself. I mean, right? You got to be a mechanic to have 38 bikes, but you're just not doing it for a living. It sounds like.
Right. So I do, like I said, the semi truck repair work emergency on commercial trucks, and I like that better because it's more business orientated. Like
Okay.
when you're working on these trucks, there's like a load in it that's worth money, and I just like it better.
So who? I mean, tell me about that. I mean, I'm fascinated, but I wasn't even sure that was a profession. Are you contacted by the company that's expecting the load? Are you contacted by the carrier? Like, is it coming in all day and night? These calls, like, how does that work?
Yeah. So it's a 24/7 business.
Wow.
Um, and sometimes you get contacted by a company. Sometimes you get a lot of guys are owner operators.
Okay.
So I like it. Every day is a different day, and
Okay.
the thing I like about it the most though is you kind of can pick and choose your calls.
Oh, really?
Someone calls you and they're like, "Hey, my transmission, yeah, my transmission just fell out of my truck." I'd be like, "Okay, I'm not coming out. It's too big of a job to do on
Right.
the road, right?" But sometimes it's as simple as like a jump start or a fuel delivery. You wouldn't believe how many big trucks run out of fuel. I'd say
Really?
one out of every 20 calls I go on is a fuel delivery. It's unreal.
And
Kind of scary to think about.
yeah, professional drivers. I mean, imagine they run out of fuel on a one lane highway. I mean,
Right.
I mean, at
Yeah.
least it's easier for you.
Yeah. Well, big trucks, when they run out, though, they're not like a regular car. You have to prime them. You have to
Uh,
prime the fuel. So it's a lot harder to get them to start
God.
sometimes.
Okay.
But I like it. I like it. I'm not complaining.
So, what's your
So,
territory?
just pretty much all around Boston, north of
Okay.
Boston, mostly Boston. But what I say is if they're willing to pay, I'm willing to go.
So
So
are you doing 95 north? Are you doing 295 as well? 495?
yeah, 95, 93, 290. I'll go out there sometimes. Route 3. Um, yeah, a lot of stuff like around north of Boston and Chelsea and stuff. Like there's a lot. I like it. it's like it brings you all different places. Most of the time, I won't drive more than 2 hours
Yeah.
because then it gets too expensive for the customer, and they're better off finding someone else local.
Fair
So
enough. So is
yeah,
it mostly long haul guys, day carriers?
yes, yeah. So most of them are like out of state guys
Okay.
because, like, back home they know somebody, but
Got it.
here they don't know anybody, so they just find me on Google or a couple other websites I advertise on. So
Oh, really? So I mean, they're stuck on the side of the highway and they're just Googling like everybody else, emergency trucker.
yeah,
Wow.
right. A lot of times they're not on the highway. The highway is very dangerous. So actually, what I do just for my own safety is before I go out, I require a picture of how they parked off the side of the road. Because if they're
Wow.
too close to the white line, no matter how much you make, it's not worth your life.
Yeah, good for you.
So I don't go out just to make, but a lot of the guys that are smart, you want to get off the highway because say if they had something that wasn't in compliance with DOT, now they're subject to DOT inspection on the side of the road
Okay.
versus you get off an exit in a parking lot and you're kind
Right.
of like off, you know what I mean?
Okay,
So
because the interstate is interstate commerce versus if you're on a county highway, it's subject to different
yeah,
regulations.
so DOT is like all federal cops and they're
Okay,
very um they don't give you a break.
I see. Okay, all right, all right. So any truckers listening, I mean, I guess they probably know that already,
Oh, they know.
but the smart
Anyways,
ones not only know that, but they know how to know how much gas they've got in their tank, I guess.
yeah. So yeah. So anyways,
So how
that's about
So getting back to motorcycles, so
yeah.
tell us about your trip. I mean, you went cross country in a motorcycle with this teardrop trailer. Tell us about the setup. Tell us about what set you up to go on the trip. And I know there was a little bit of backstory there.
Yeah, sure. So I'll try to keep it short. But going back to my first motorcycle when I was 16, I was like, wow, wouldn't it be cool someday just to get on a motorcycle, not have a plan, and just go? I don't know. I just always had this like vision of doing this. And fast forward to, I don't know, like 8 years ago now, I was 27. I broke up with a girl. I was living in Florida, moved back home. And my business, I was selling vintage motorcycle parts online, was on the decline as well. And I
Okay,
saw it coming and I was like, you know what? I think it's time for me to like live out that dream that I've always had. I'm just
good
hitting
for
the
you.
road and going. I'm like, I'm not getting any younger. I've got some money saved and I'm just going to go for it. And then when I get back, I'll figure out what I'm going to do and start up a new business.
All right.
So yeah, so I started working on that idea. And then the only thing I was like, I always knew I wanted to do it on the motorcycle. So I was like, where am I going to sleep? Right. And I kept bouncing this idea off my friend. And he's like, you ever see those like little teardrop trailers? I was like, not really. And I started researching them. I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, this looks cool. I could put it behind my bike and then I could just pull over somewhere and sleep in it, like anywhere I was, because I'll have it behind the motorcycle. So they were very expensive. So me being myself, I'm like, I'll just build one. So um, I built the whole thing from the frame to the wood to everything from scratch. Everything. I didn't even buy. I was gonna buy a trailer frame and build it off of that, but just I don't know. I'm a welder, so I just got into it, bought all the parts, and put it together.
Wow. And so what's the size of this thing? I mean, is it almost like for folks to picture listening, is it like a
Look,
motorcycle sidecar, but you're trailing it behind you in some respects? Similar
no,
shape?
it's like so the literal construction of it is I laid on the floor one time on a piece of plywood and I had someone mark my feet in my head and I was like, all right, that's as long as it needs to be.
All right.
And I built it up from that like piece of sheet of plywood, obviously metal frame and all that.
Okay.
And then you just tow it behind the bike. Um, there was a lot of trial and error building that trailer before I left. It honestly, like it took a lot. Which I
Weight
could go into
balance.
it if you. Yeah. So biggest thing was like two things. Tongue weight on a trail is extremely important. So I moved the axle on the trailer about 2 or 3 times to get the tongue weight on the bike right. And then the other thing that I didn't have any clue I was gonna have to do. I added weights to the front of the frame of the bike and over the forks of the wheel, because what would happen is you'd be driving around town, it's okay, get on the highway and get up to like 50 and then you'd hit a bump and the trail was like almost half the weight of the bike and it would shake the front end of the bike. So I kept adding weight and I eventually got up to like 75 miles an hour and was able to let the handlebars go and go straight. And I was like, all right, this will work. But it was like, I think I put like 40 pounds on the front of the bike
40 pounds,
to make it stop shaking.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy, but it worked.
So how many wheels are on this thing? Is it a 4-wheel?
The bike's a regular 2-wheel motorcycle. I built a custom trailer hitch on the bike, and then the trailer's just got 2 wheels on it.
The trailer's 2 wheels too. Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay, so one side by side.
What I always like to tell people is, like, if you listen to this story, if you go on my Instagram, the Traveling Larry, you could actually follow along with the story. And I took pictures all on the trip, pictures of building the trailer, and it's kind of cool to like see some of the pictures. But anyways,
and so that handle say that handle again.
The Traveling Larry.
All right, check it out, and that's on Instagram.
Correct. Yep.
Right.
So yeah.
And so this was like you slept in it, but it also had a storage compartment as well. How did that work?
Yeah. So I had 2 different storage compartments. Inside, like on the roof of the like the teardrop, like the curve shape, I built like a little cabinet to hold clothes.
Okay.
And then it had 2 windows that you could see out of. And then on the back side of the hatch that went down the end, I built a hatch on the exterior just to hold tools, because I knew I would need, I can fix things, but if I don't have tools to fix them, what are you doing, Yeah. So I filled the whole thing with tools. So, yeah.
So how long did it take until you had the whole kit like complete and you felt comfortable and ready to hit the road?
So I was still working like full time with my parts business. It took about 6 months to build everything, just trial and error and, working part time on it, until I felt comfortable enough to leave. So I left in like early, I think it was the first or second week of October of 2014.
Okay. And where did you go first? I mean, how many miles you travel in a day? I mean, you weren't going to Indiana the first day. I mean, I'm sure you took it nice and slow and did it right.
So, yeah. So the idea of the trip was like, I'm not trying to get anywhere fast. I'm trying to see things. Right. Yeah. So, I wanted to take all back roads versus highway, because you see things on back roads. So I always try to stick to the back roads. So I'd average only like 300 miles a day, which is like super obtainable. You know what I mean?
That's enough. I mean, that's still, 60 miles an hour. That's still a solid 5 hours of driving, and stopping here.
Oh, yeah. It was always more than that, because things would happen. And it was like always like 8 to 10 hour day of riding.
Okay.
Just because of back roads and stuff, you know what I mean?
Well, that's the way to do it. Yeah, that's the way to do it. So,
yeah. And then I'd always want to try to like kind of land in like a bigger city.
Okay.
Just to see more things at night, you know what I mean? So I don't know.
So
anyways,
you park and then go out to a restaurant, bar, wherever, just to keep yourself entertained.
Yeah, just meet the locals, say what's up,
So, and then where would you sleep? I mean, would you do like rest areas? Would you do like, parking lots and people stay in Walmart?
Yeah, so
people stay in hotel
park. So that was so I didn't really have that. I was thinking Walmarts, because everybody says Walmarts, right? It's like a public place. But what I found the best was hotel parking lots, because the way this trailer looked, it looked almost too small that you couldn't sleep in it. So people would think that I was just staying in the hotel at night.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I never stayed more than one night in a hotel parking lot. I always just got up and went somewhere else the next day. Right. So it was like, it wasn't weird to the hotels either. Right. But yeah, there was some definitely interesting times in learning on the road doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I guess going back to maybe your original question is, so I left Billerica, Massachusetts in first or second week in October, and I started making my way down to like Pennsylvania. I had a girl I was dating at the time in Connecticut, so I was like, oh, stop there one more night, say my goodbyes to her, you know? And that was nice. And then she went to work early that day. And I remember waking up that morning after she went to work. She let me sleep in a couple hours, and I just woke up, and it was like, it's going to sound really corny, but it was the most freeing feeling I've ever felt in my life. Because I woke up and I was like, I don't have to do anything anymore. Like, I'm just on the road by myself and I'm just going. And it was like, I don't know. It's just weird. It's just like to not have a plan and just go was kind of cool.
There is.
It was a good feeling.
I'd like to wake up like that every once in a while. You know, I'm sure all of us would. You know, as much as.
But that's it's funny though. Every day on this 7-month trip was kind of like that.
Wow.
So it was a different like way to experience life for a little while.
Yeah, it sure is, and that's the time to do it. And I'm, you know, but hey, there's no wrong time either. So
there's no wrong time. I met a lot of like older people that made me feel good about what I was doing though. They're like, I said I was going to do that, and then life happened, and I never did that. And they like, I'd meet these people like at gas station or something. Like, good for you, man. So because I was like, am I doing the right thing? Should I be like, starting another business right now? But it made me feel good when I talked to those people.
Yeah, I had heard something about people, on their deathbed in like a hospital, and one of their regrets was not doing something. It was not doing something that they wanted to do. So that's when I, starting up this podcast 2 years ago was like, you know what, let's do it. Let's do it. And it's, who knows where things will go, but nobody can ever say that I didn't try. It's the same thing with going on an adventure like that. So
that's right. Good for you, man. I applaud you for doing it.
Hey, well, thanks for being on, and let's hear the first like couple of weeks and like how you got, your feet on the road and, highway miles.
Yeah, I guess the first night sleeping on the road was kind of interesting. I was in New Jersey somewhere, and I was like, all right, I'll just crash in this hotel parking lot. And I remember laying in the trailer, and then all of a sudden headlights are flashing in the trailer. And I was like, oh man, I forgot to build window shades to keep lights out. Yeah, I didn't even think of it because you didn't sleep in it yet, right? And so I took an old pair of jeans I had in the trailer, cut them up, and I actually had my drill, oddly enough, in the trailer. Took some screws out of the windows, and then like I put them in, and I was able to sleep. And so I got through that night. The next night, I went down to York, Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. And this is kind of a cool story. I was there, and I was trying to find a place to sleep, and but I wanted to go out to a bar and meet some people or whatever. So I pulled up to this biker bar someone recommended, and I saw a bunch of like a motorcycle club outside the bar. And nothing against motorcycle clubs, but you typically don't want to, like, especially being alone, kind of like, you don't know how they're going to react, right? Yeah. So I met these guys. I liked the trail or whatever. We went to a bar, and I was kind of keeping my distance a little bit though, because I still wasn't sure. I was by myself, right? Yeah. And that's right. Yeah. So I asked these guys, I'm like, I got to ask, what type of club are you guys in? And they're like, oh, we're not a club. We're a bunch of veterans that like to ride together.
No patches.
Like, no patches. And I was like, oh, that's cool, man. Like and then it instantly broke like the ice and things were better. And I remember we were at this bar, and they're like, all right, let's do some shots. And they're like, you just got to agree to the shot before you do it. I'm like, all right, whatever. I'll do a shot with you guys. So they poured some tequila, and I'm like, whatever. He's like, no, you got to pour it in your hand. And I was like, what? And they're like, this is called an infantry shot. I don't know if you ever heard of this shot. So before you do that, you pour a little tequila in your hand, and you sniffing up your nose and hold it for 30 seconds. And the burn represents like the pain and suffering of the infantry on the front line. Okay. And after 30 seconds, you take the shot, like a regular shot. And I was like, wow, that's a different one.
I haven't heard of that one before. You didn't have to snort any salt or lime along with it, or?
No. Well, maybe I don't know. Maybe there was. I mean, that was the first of a few shots, I think, that night.
Yeah.
So that night, they were like, oh, the guy who was like, like kind of like the leader of the group or whatever, he's like, oh, you can crash in my place, man. You're gonna be sleeping in that trailer for a long time. I was like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I could crash in the driveway, still worry about, I wasn't sure where these people were. And then he was friendly with the owner of the bar. The bar ended up closing down. He had an after party with the owner of the bar at his house.
All right.
So I'm at this after party. His girlfriend's there, whatever. We're having a good time. And he's like, man, sleep on the couch. And I was like, all right. So he seemed fair, like a safe enough guy. But the funniest thing, when I went to sleep on this couch, he goes, hey, you seem like a nice guy, but just to let you know, there's 10 guns in the room over there. And this pit bull will be watching you all night. And I was like,
sleep tight.
he's like, have a good night. Exactly, right? I was like, all right. So I just went to sleep. And I woke up and the pit bull was like licking my hand. It was pretty funny. And went in the next room and the guy like showed me all those guns he had. Let me hold one. I took a picture with it. And wicked cool guy. And then that morning, it's kind of my send off. We rode out to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And I don't know, have you ever been there?
I have, yeah. It's a somber, but it's a very, it's a peaceful, it's a nice spot to visit.
Yeah. So I rode out there with these guys, and same thing, same experience I had there, somber and very like very calming, very like I don't know, just makes you think about things, right? And that was cool. And riding out there on the Harley, like have the Harley, when you like bring the idle down, it's got that like low lump to it. So that made it like, I don't know, something about the sound of the Harley riding through those hills made it different too. But anyways, I said my goodbyes to these guys and I took off from there and kind of kept heading south from there.
All right. And so you did this trip on a Harley?
Yeah.
Okay.
I did it on a Harley, which oh man, they live up to their name. It was an 89.
Okay. What do you mean by live up to their name? Tell people about that.
Oh, they're fun, but the engineering on them is just terrible. They're always breaking, you know what I mean? Yeah. You ever hear that joke like, oh, if a Harley's not, if you don't see oil on a Harley, it's just out of oil.
But it's a Harley, so they I guess they got the brand recognition carries a lot of weight for a lot of people.
Yeah. So it's actually funny. One time I this girl, Kate, a friend of mine's girlfriend, was over my garage the other day, and I was like, her boyfriend was buying Harley parts off me to fix a bike, and he's fixed his part like 2 or 3 times.
Right.
And I was like, I'm like, see that BMW over there? I'm like, that's what your boyfriend needs. You don't have to fix anything on it. You just push the go button and go. Right. And she goes, that's cool. But she said herself, she's like, I would never be caught dead riding on one of those. So that's what Harley has. They have that brand recognition, and I think a lot of guys buy them just because they need a Harley.
Yeah.
But I get 3 Harleys, but I mean, like, I'm just saying, they're not as good as everybody makes them out to be.
Fair enough. I mean, and you would know better than most people. So
yeah. So sorry, going back to what you were saying.
Yeah, we're in Gettysburg, as they call it in Gettysburg.
Yeah. So I guess back to my Harley. It's an 89 FXR, and FXR RT. I put a fairing on it with a radio and saddlebag, so it's a little bit more touring than I made it, but it was still an 89 Harley, so it was pretty old even for 14, So yeah, I left south of Gettysburg and cut through West Virginia. West Virginia is some of the most beautiful state I've ever seen. It's really, really beautiful. I never really realized how beautiful West Virginia is. I would say that was probably one of my favorite places I saw in the country.
Yeah. A lot of people miss it because you have to go off the highway. I mean, I guess you can go through parts of it on 40, I think goes through West Virginia a little bit, at least on the highway, but it's not. You have to want to go to West Virginia. And man, those hills, it's hills upon hills, and it's a lot. Mountains and almost heaven.
Yeah. So the funny thing I like to say about West Virginia is it's one of the most beautiful states, but it's one of the most trashiest states I've seen. These people would live in the middle of nowhere in houses or trailers or whatever, and I drive by their house and there's just trash everywhere in the yard. And I was just like, why not just burn it? You're in the middle of nowhere. Like, I don't know. It's just so weird.
For me, I'm like,
I don't know. It was like,
I'm a neat Nick too. I'm like, I can't. I mean, some of these houses, and I've seen, when I lived down in Western North Carolina and the Appalachians there, it just looked like a plane crashed into an appliance store. And they're just parts of stuff like all over the yard. And it's like, take it to the scrap metal place and you make a few $100 in your house.
It's just crazy, but whatever, to each their own. I like people just to live their own life. That's what's the beauty, the beauty of this country. People can just do whatever. That's how you want to live. That's how you live.
Especially when you're in a rural area like that. There's no building codes. There's very little nobody telling you. No housing associations.
Anyways, in West Virginia? Just again, like I wouldn't say in a place more than one night. So I just passed through. Nothing happened in West Virginia. Passed through. Next, I think I went through Kentucky. And I went through Louisville, and after that, I shot down to Nashville. I had some friends in Nashville that I met up with there. So that was pretty cool. Staying there for a couple days, reuniting with a few friends, sleeping in a couch instead of in a trailer. That was cool.
And a couch with no pit bulls breathing over you all night.
No pit bulls breathing me over. You know what? There was only one kind of crazy thing that happened in Nashville. One night we went out to a bar and had the trailer on the back of the bike, and one of my friends, he said, "Hey, has anybody ever rode in the back of that trailer?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "Could I try doing that?" So we had a couple drinks, and in retrospect, shouldn't have done this. But I took him for a little ride from the bar back to my buddy's house. Thank God we made it home safe. But I told him the next morning, we should have never done that. But we made it.
Did it mess with the balance with having an extra 150 plus pounds?
Oh yeah. He was a big boy too. He was like 200 plus.
Okay.
So, I was like, how was it riding back there? He's like, not as bad as you think. I was like, well, it felt terrible.
yeah, up front.
Yeah. So yeah, I left Nashville after a couple days. Where was the next place I went? I think I landed in like Missouri was the next place. Kansas, St. Louis. And this was back, I think, when all those like shootings were going on. Remember what was 14? There was like that big. Do you remember the shootings in St. Louis or something? There was something crazy. I can't remember exactly what was going on, but man, St. Louis, that was one of the not nicest towns I passed through. It was so bad that I usually would go out to like a bar every night and just get a drink, maybe write. Oh, by the way, on this whole trip, I was writing in my journal. I was keeping a journal.
Good for you.
So on like just like a regular weeknight, I'd go to a bar and grab.
Right. I do the same.
Bar. Yeah. So not to like, get drunk, just to be social, whatever. Yeah. But that night in St. Louis, literally could not find a bar I felt like was safe. And I remember driving down this like side street, and all of a sudden there's just like 100 people. This was like on a Monday night at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. There was 100 people barbecuing in the street, just random street. And I was like, I had this theory on this trip. If something doesn't feel safe, don't stop to figure out if it is safe. So I just rolled right past it. I ended up sleeping in like a condo complex that night. I got up that next morning and I was just like, get me out of here. It wasn't, I don't know. Sorry if anyone's from St. Louis out there. Maybe if I meet you, you can show me the good part of town.
There you go. There you go.
But I also wanted to tell you something about sleeping in the trailer. That I did on like my first or second night sleeping in the trailer on the road. I was like, I was like nervous to sleep in it. Like somebody come up to the trailer at night, mess with me or whatever. And then I did this thing after the first night sleeping in the trailer. I was like, you know what? If someone's going to mess with you, they're going to mess with you, whether you worry about it or not. So you might as well just shut the door, close your eyes, and just go to sleep. And then just so you get plenty of rest in the morning. And that was like my thing I did every night, no matter how uncomfortable I thought. I was like, just shut the door and go to bed. But
Nice.
I usually would feel pretty comfortable where I'd scope out the places during the day, you know what I mean?
Smart. Yeah.
So, but anyways,
Any
yeah,
nights
that
where
was St. Louis.
any nights where you felt
Good.
like were any nights that people were messing around with the trailer while you were sleeping, or
Funny you say that. I'm going to get to that story right
let's
now
hear
in
it. All
Denver.
right.
So I forgot to mention this. In Kansas City, Missouri, I spent my first night sleeping in a Walmart parking lot just because, I don't know, I was like, well, I'll try it.
Give it a shot.
And I woke up early in the morning to a street sweeper doing circles around my trailer, picking up the parking lot. And I was like, oh, this sucks. And then that morning I woke up and I looked out my window and peeked out the window, and there was an old guy in an S10 pickup, I remember. And he was taking a picture of my bike and trail. I'm like, oh, this is too good. So I jumped out and I like scared him. He had no idea someone was sleeping in it. And I was like, he was scared. And we both sat there. We just had a laugh. And then after that, I just took off.
That's good. I like that. I mean, this thing was
So,
pretty narrow. I mean, headspace, we're talking what, 2 feet maybe, or
2.5, something.
yeah,
I don't know. I never measured it.
yeah,
But it wasn't big at all. It was like definitely like the way you got in it, like you kind of like crawled in it. You know what I mean? You put your feet in first and then slid your butt in and then
okay,
shut the door. So I actually had an interesting you ever have those friends growing up that like messed with you like while you were sleeping or pranks or whatever?
yeah,
Or I don't know, people in general messing with people. So I always had a fear that someone would lock the trailer from the outside and I wouldn't be able to get out. Cause like, so what I did, I made like a thing on the outside lock. So once I was in, you couldn't lock it from the outside. And I had a lock on the inside, like a
gotcha.
deadlock on both sides. So it kind of was something I thought about. Anyways, getting over to Denver. So I was tired that day. I drove a long time and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to call it an early night. Like, we'll try this Walmart parking lot. Went to bed, crashed. I woke up like at 7 in the morning and I heard like a bunch of people talking around my trailer, and like someone bumped into the trailer a little bit, and I was like, oh man, I'm just gonna pretend that I'm not in here because maybe nobody knows I'm in here. So all of a sudden they went away and I went back to sleep for like another hour. Boom, someone bumps the trailer again. I wake up, I'm like, all right, somebody knows I'm in here, and I don't know. I'm not gonna be like on the I don't want to be on the defensive, right? So I'm not a violent guy, but I had 2 knives with me just for protection. So all of a sudden they bumped in the trailer again, and I busted the door open. I had a knife by my side. I jumped out like ready to go, and then all of a sudden I'm looking around, and all these people are staring at me like they had no idea I was even in the trailer.
Right.
And I'm like, what is going on here? I parked and I parked under a casino bus stop sign in the Walmart parking lot. All these people were just getting on a bus to go to work to the casino. I had no idea. And,
Okay.
like they were all speaking Spanish too. And I didn't, I couldn't understand them. So that freaked me out more too. But oh, that was funny. It was nerve-wracking, but funny.
I mean, I guess it served
So
you pretty well not having no people thinking that it was just storage and no idea there could actually be somebody sleeping in there. But then again, nobody knew not to
right, because it's
bother you.
pretty small. But that was the last Walmart parking lot I ever slept in on the road.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I spent I actually had a friend of a friend in Denver. I stayed a night with there. Like, this woman, my father's friend's wife, her sister lived there. So I spent a night with her. Nothing crazy happened in Denver. And then I headed up into Wyoming from Denver. So
Nice.
I wanted to go coast to coast, but I'm like petrified of heights. And I'm like, I don't want to cross the Rockies. And I'm like, not on a time schedule. So I was like, oh, I'll just go all the way north above the Rockies and then cut over in like Washington.
Okay.
Because again, I'm not on a time schedule. I'm like, I hate heights. I'm like, I don't want to deal with this.
Fair enough.
So yeah, so I went into Wyoming, and Wyoming Wyoming was pretty funny. There's like not much in Wyoming, but I couldn't find like a major city to crash in Wyoming. So I found this little tiny town called Glendale, Wyoming, population 500. So
501.
I was like, yeah. So I went out. I remember that night to a restaurant, get something to eat. And I'm like, oh, is there a bar in town? They're like, yeah, there's one bar in town. I was like, oh, I'll just go there and do some writing in my journal. And I was there writing in my journal, shooting the shit with some people there. And then I made friends with the bartender there. And at the end of the night, he shut down the bar. He's like, yeah, you can hang out some more if you want, whatever. And then a friend of his came in, this girl, and we all just started drinking. This girl had like a puppy, a brand new puppy, and it kept having like accidents in the bar. And I was like, oh, that's pretty gross, whatever. So we're all sitting there, and I'm like asking the bartender, I was like, hey, where do you think I can crash with my bike and trailer for the night? He's like, oh, you can sleep out behind the bar. I was like, oh, that's sweet. That works. That's convenient. Thanks, man. And then the girl was like, she's like, oh, you could come back to my place with me. And I was like, I actually said no, because she wasn't even a bad looking girl. But you know what? That dog pissing and pooping everywhere freaked me out. I'm like, if this girl's letting this dog piss and poop in the bar, I can only imagine what her house is going to be like. So I declined that night.
So you took the pit bulls over the puppy.
Yeah, exactly. I do remember waking up that morning, though. That was the coldest night of the trip. I woke up that morning in the trailer, and it was so weird. I wasn't cold. I slept in all my clothes that night, but it was 17 degrees out.
Oh,
And I woke up and I could see my breath in the trailer, but I wasn't cold, because I think that trailer was so small that your body didn't
yeah,
have like
a sleeping
anywhere to
bag.
go.
Like a sleeping bag.
But yeah, but I did have some great gear on the trip. Shout out to this place, Psycho Gear. I had all heated gear that plugged into my motorcycle. So it was
Nice.
like a heated suit. Yeah. So that day was the coldest day I rode. And then I rode up to this other place in Wyoming called Thermopolis, Wyoming. I don't know if you ever heard of this place.
Oh,
So it's got natural hot springs in it. And went up there and I wanted to check these hot springs out. And I also saw these wild buffalo. So I was going down this hill to look at these wild buffalo, and some guy in a car shouting, he's like, hey, you're getting too close to those buffalo. You should stop. And he looked like a tourist. He had like his family and stuff with him. I was like, yeah, this guy don't know what he's talking about. I'm like, so I'll just check these buffalo. I was like, listen, they stopped eating. They noticed you. And I was like, all right, maybe this guy knows what he's talking about, right? So I walked up to this guy, started shooting the shit with him, and turns out he's from like Chicago. Turns out he was like fascinated with my story of like trip so far. He's like, you got to come over to my house for dinner and tell me more about your trip. And I'm like, all right, well, been pretty lucky on this trip with random people so far. So I'm like, why not? I'm like, you have a family, can't be, too crazy. So I went to this hot springs resort, which was pretty cool if you've never been to one. It was like a 70s style water park,
okay.
but pretty cool. So anyways, after that, I ended up going to this guy's house. Man, this guy had such a story. He was from Chicago. His family's from Bosnia, and he moved to his family. He was bringing up his family in Chicago, and there was so many bad shootings that he picked up his family and moved to this middle of nowhere, Thermopolis, Wyoming, to get away from all the crime in Chicago.
Okay.
And he said it worked out great. He's like a director of a hospital and all this stuff.
Wow.
So we're sitting there, had dinner, had like a drink or two with him. And then I was like, all right, man, I'm gonna go sleep in my trailer, in your driveway. He's like, no, man, just sleep on my couch. He's like, in the morning, I'm gonna get up early. He's like, I probably won't see you when you get up. My wife will make you breakfast, and then you can get on your way. And I was like, man, it just like shocks you how nice people are, right? And trusting too.
Yeah.
And I woke up and his cat was laying on my chest and another dog licking my hand. Wife made me breakfast, and that was on my road again.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah. So, yeah, from there I went up to Bozeman, Montana. You
Nice
ever been to
town.
Bozeman?
Yeah, nice town.
Yeah,
Great town.
that was one of my favorite places actually in the country.
Okay.
Um, pretty crazy thing happened in Bozeman. So remember I was telling you I was keeping these journals on the trip, this journal, and I was in Bozeman. It was like a Tuesday night, nothing crazy, and just gonna go to a bar, have a drink, and write in the journals. And then all of a sudden, these three guys and this one girl start talking to me, and all of a sudden, I told them what I was doing, and next thing you know, we're doing shots, and and make a long story short, the girl, these three guys end up being three gay guys, and this girl, I was like, oh, so she's like single or something. So she invites me back to her house for a small after party. I was like, oh, okay, I guess I have a place to crash maybe. And I get to her house, and all I remember was she's like, oh, and my boyfriend. And I was like, what? Why did you have me come all the way to your house?
What a letdown.
Whatever, right? So I was like, whatever. But then these guys gave me a ride back to my bike. I lay in my trailer, and then all of a sudden, I'm like, crap, I left my journal at this girl's house on her counter. And I was like, I was so upset because I've been this was like one I was keeping.
Yeah.
And then, so the next day I was pretty hungover, but I spent the whole day retracing my steps trying to find this journal. And, yeah, so I never found that journal. But fast forward to the end of the story, 6 months later, I had this crazy idea. I wanted this journal back. And I put an ad in the Bozeman paper saying what happened. And one of those guys called me and goes, hey, Rachel still has your journal. And I was like, what? You sent it to me? I know, right? And I was like, and it looked like I was going to get back the original journal. And I was so excited. And then all of a sudden, he just didn't answer my text/calls. And I never got it. So if Rachel, you're listening to this podcast, send me back that journal.
Rachel and Bozeman with the journal.
So
the exact same thing happened to me in Boulder, Colorado. And a friend and I were driving cross country, and we were at a bar, and we were just hanging out with a couple of guys, and they're like, hey, you can sleep on our couch. And so we slept on their couch. I had my journal with me, and it got underneath the couch or in the sofa cushions. I never got it back. So
man, where were you, in Boulder?
In Boulder, Colorado. Yeah. Yep.
Maybe you got to put it out in the newspaper.
There you go. Yeah, but then I would get ghosted. So.
Hey, it might work.
You never know.
So anyways, so I was bummed. I moved on from there. I went up to Spokane was the next stop.
Okay.
Nothing crazy happened in Spokane. Then I cut over to Seattle, and I had some family friends there. So I ended up hanging out there for like 3 days or something, and which was nice to sleep in like a bed again. You know what I mean? It's always nice to get a bed. So I took off from Seattle. I was pretty happy to leave Seattle. The only thing I really remember about Seattle was wake up in the morning, look like Boston weather, overcast. I was like, oh, I don't need to put the rain suit on today. Literally drive a half mile up the road, soaked. I'm like, oh, okay, now I'm soaked, so I'm not going to put the rain suit on. And then it would dry. It was just a constant raining all the time. But so I left Seattle. I went down to Portland, Oregon next. Nothing crazy happened in Portland, Oregon, except for maybe the cover for my book that I'm writing about.
All right.
So I was at this bar at the end of the night, and it was called Moo Moo's. Talking to this girl there. I'm like, hey, I parked on this like side street. You think it's gonna be okay to sleep there? You think it's safe? She's like, oh yeah, it's totally safe. And I was like, cool. Left, we exchanged Instagrams or whatever. And the next morning I wake up, and she took a picture of my bike and trailer and sent it to me while I was sleeping in it. So I thought that was pretty cool. And it's like outside this like church. It's a really cool picture. And so yeah, that next morning when I got woken up that next morning, I heard a diesel truck idling. I was like, oh, I'm getting towed. It's time to get up. It ended up just being like a street sweeper though.
Okay. You seem to attract a lot of street sweepers.
Unfortunately. I had a part-time job in college, actually working for a street sweeping company on the highways. It was a good gig.
Nice.
But anyway, so left Portland, made my way down to California, a little bit on the coast. When I hit California, the coast was getting too wild for me with the heights, so I went back inland.
All right.
And yeah, so I think ended up in like Santa Rosa, California one night. And, now that like, I felt like the only reason now that I'm thinking about it, a lot of times I'd like crash with people. I was like, always a chance that you're going to be with a girl that was with them. Why would you want to crash with like a guy's house, right? So I found this other random group of people, and they had like a single girl with them or something, and they invited me back to the house. And once again, I found myself sleeping on a couch. But the funniest thing I noticed in California, I went to these people's house, and they're like, "Oh, you want to smoke some marijuana?" I'm like, "No, not really." I'm like, "I'm not really into that or whatever." And then they just bring out these huge jars of marijuana, and this is back at like 14 before everything was legal. And I was like, "Man, are you guys like drug deals and stuff?" They're like, "No, everybody in California has this much weed." I was like, "What?" So I ended up nothing ended up happening that night. I ended up crashing on the couch and got up the next day. I went to San Francisco, and so I'll try to. I was there in San Francisco for a little while, but I was talking to people in San Francisco. And I was like, "Hey, where's a good place to sleep? Where's a good place to sleep?" Everyone's like, "There's nowhere to sleep. The homeless population, the cops are on everybody, and all this stuff." And I was like, "Oh man," I was like, "I'll just have to figure this out at the end of the night." So I met this girl in a bar, and she was a nice, friendly girl, just shooting the shit. And all of a sudden, the end of the night comes around, and I was like, "Hey, where can I park?" I didn't think she was like into me at all or anything. I was like, "Hey, where can I park my bike and trailer to sleep? Like, any suggestions?" She's like, "There's no good spots." I'm like, "Oh, nice meeting you. I'll figure it out." She's like, "No, I think you should come back to my place." So I end up staying with this girl in San Francisco for like 3 or 4 days, way
Nice.
longer than I wanted to. Well, way longer than I was expecting, but it worked out. And she showed me around the city and everything, and it was pretty interesting time. She was like a true hippie from San Francisco. One night we were watching a movie with and she's like, "Hey, you want some popcorn?" And I was like, "Sure." So I'm going in the kitchen, thinking we'd throw some like popcorn in a microwave. I was like, "Where's your microwave?" She's like, "Microwave? Why would I have a microwave?" I was like, "I don't know." She's like, "No." She had no microwave. She thought those were like the toxic things. But she just
Okay.
made popcorn on the stove. Yeah,
Stove
like
top, 70s style.
oh yeah, this girl was a very nice girl, but she was like she was pretty all natural. But yeah, she was a sweetheart.
Good.
But so I left San Francisco, and from there I was continuing to head south. And I had a friend who lived in Lancaster, California, which is kind of near it's like the country outside of LA. It's like 3 hours west of LA. Trying to like Bakersfield.
Okay.
I don't know if you ever heard that. So,
Yep.
anyways, I hadn't seen this guy in like 3 or 4 years. He was a friend of mine, and I was just gonna randomly show up at his house. I don't even know if he knew I was on my trip.
Wow.
We literally hadn't talked that long. So I'm on my way to his house, and I'm climbing this hill, and it's starting to get dark out at night. And all of a sudden, the bike is starting to like slip in and out of gear. And I'm like, "Oh no, what's going on?" I'm like thinking the worst, something with my transmission or whatever.
Right.
So I end up getting to a top of the hill, and I end up coasting down the hill. And then I go to some town. I'm like, "I'm just gonna sleep here and figure it out." But what it ended up being was my belt on my bike, the teeth were wearing off of it. It was a rubber belt,
Okay.
and it was only catching on like so many teeth. So that was kind of a relief, because that's not as bad as the transmission.
Good job.
So I called my buddy up the next day. I was like, "Hey, I was gonna surprise you, but this is what's going on. Like, do you have could I work on my bike at your house?" He's like, "Yeah, absolutely." So I was like, "All right, cool. Let me figure out how I'm gonna get there," because I couldn't ride it. I was still like 200 or 300 miles away from him. So I was like, "How am I gonna get my bike there?" So what I end up coming up with this idea, I end up renting a U-Haul, putting the bike in the back, and then I put my trailer on the trailer hitch, and I drove the U-Haul to his house with the bike in the back and the trailer. Just like another picture on my Instagram, you can see.
Okay.
You can see a bunch of stuff I talked about. But it was so funny, like being in a truck again. I hadn't been, in a vehicle for like a month.
Right.
So it was a weird feeling, but good thing kind of happened, because if that had happened later, there was no cell service over these mountains I had to pass with that. So everything happens for a reason, I feel like.
Yeah.
Anyways, got to his house, fixed the bike up, stayed like a week waiting on parts, whatever. And now I'm on my way to LA. And when I started the bike up, I was like, I feel like I hear another different noise. And I'm like, nah, I probably just haven't heard the bike on in a while. So then I get to LA, to another friend's house in LA I was going to stay with. And then I brought the bike by a couple motorcycle shops, and like, you got piston slap. And I was like, oh no. And piston slap is like, from what a couple of these guys told me, it's there's too much play in the piston and the cylinders. I know I'm talking like a lot of motor stuff, but the tolerances were too big in the motor now. And
too
one
much
guy,
space.
too much space. Yep.
Yeah.
And one guy was like, you might be good forever. It might, because it'd only be loud at like an idle, and then you put a load on it, it'd go away. And one guy's like, I'm like, no, you know what? I'm in LA. I'm staying at my buddy's house. I'm like, I might as well just fix this now. You got to tear apart the whole top of the motor to do this. So I'm like, how am I going to do this? Where am I going to work on it? Because now I'm in an apartment complex. I can't work on it outside. So you know what I came up with? You can rent your unit out there. And I worked on it in a storage unit. And the best part about renting the storage unit was the first month was free. And I was like, this is great. I'm not going to be here more than a month. So the only thing I remember about renting the storage unit, which I thought was super weird, just being from Boston, is they're like, yeah, that's fine. You can work on your bike, but you can't live in it. I'm like, well, why would I live in a storage unit? Oh my God. I never realized so many homeless people live in storage units.
Oh, wow.
It was like the weirdest thing. Yeah. I guess in warmer climates, it makes sense, right? I don't know.
Wow.
So like, I've seen like dozens of people at that storage unit living there. But anyways, I forgot to mention this other thing. Before I left on this trip, my grandparents were having a 60th wedding anniversary party, and I said, no matter where I was in the country, I was going to stop what I was doing, park the bike, get on a plane, go home, see them for their wedding anniversary, and come back. So I thought I was going to be in Phoenix, Arizona by this time. So I had booked a flight out of Phoenix, because I had another family friend there. But that didn't happen. So now my bike's all torn apart, and I had to be on a flight in like 3 or 4 days, and I'm in LA, and I need to get to Phoenix. So, so trusting the goodwill of others, I went on Craigslist and I found this ride share thing where you could like hop in a car with a bunch of people and give them gas money where they were going. So I found this guy, $40-50 with a couple other guys heading to Phoenix. And I was talking to the guy I was going to stay with, the family, and he was like an hour away from where he needed to pick me up. And it was getting late. And he's like, hey, I'm not going to be able to make it out there to pick you up. And I was like, what? I'm like, I don't have any way to stay, man. Like, he's like, yeah, you just have to figure it out. I was kind of like really disappointed in this guy. I hadn't seen him in years, and this is what he's doing to me.
Yeah.
And the guy I was traveling with was like some kind of Middle Eastern foreign guy, super nice guy. And he goes, no worries, my friend. I know this woman who takes on fellow travelers like yourself. I was like, thanks, man. But I gotta figure this out. Then we're getting close to where he needs to drop me off, and the hotel prices were like astronomical for some reason. So I was like, all right, give her a call. I'm like, if I haven't died yet, this might be the night, right? And gave her a call. She wanted to take me in, and I was like, showed up, met her outside her apartment for about 2 minutes. It was probably as creepy as I thought it could be.
Okay.
Walk in her house, lizards everywhere. Just a woman just loved lizards. I swear to God, there was like 30 lizards, big ones, small ones, all different freaking colors. And I was like, what am I getting myself into? And she ended up being like a wicked nice woman, and I was like, I don't know, maybe she just likes lizards, I guess. And chatted with her for like a half an hour, 45 minutes. She's like, yeah, you can sleep in that room. Went in the room, shut the door. I'm like, if I make it through this night, I'm never dying on this trip. Like nothing's gonna kill me on this trip. And I woke up the next day alive, and I like hit up that guy, came pick me up, and I like honestly, if I never see that woman again, I'm totally cool with it. She was a nice woman, but it's just that whole experience. I took pictures with the lizards. You can see them on my Instagram.
All
There's like a huge 4-foot one that was like sitting on my shoulder. I was like, God. But yeah, that was the experience. So, anyways, flew home, did the thing with my grandparents, flew back to Phoenix, and I was like, well, this ride share thing worked out once, didn't kill me. Let's try it again to get back to LA. I get in this car, and I can't. The like the girl driving had a breathalyzer. I was like, oh God, here we go. So it's me, her, and this other guy also doing the ride share. The guy is going to see his mother in the hospital that was hit in a drunk driving accident by another drunk driver. And like these two were sitting up front chatting away, and I'm like, this is just the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, like, that girl dropped me off, everything was fine, but honestly, I feel like they hooked up. They were like connecting on like such a weird level. Like, and it was like the weirdest thing. They like were super friends with each other by the end of that trip.
Wow.
Yeah.
You would think it would be the opposite. They would almost be mortal enemies, right?
I know, and it was like I was shocked. I was just sitting back there. I'm like, it was just another interesting experience, just weird timing. But they like were literally like therapy for each other or something. It was super interesting. But
Hey, some people need lizards. Everybody got their thing to make them happy.
listen, I don't need lizards. I guess I'm attracted. They are attracted to me. I don't know. Oh, but so do you have any questions or anything?
Yeah, you made it back to LA. I'm just, we're just rolling with the story. So keep on rolling with us. So
all right. So made it back to LA. Put my bike all back together finally, and then I roll out of there. Roll down to San Diego. I had another friend there and stayed with him for a little while. Really nice guy. I hadn't seen in years either. And the only thing that's crazy that kind of happened in San Diego was we went out one night and with a bunch of his friends. So his name was Chattel, and he's he's an Indian guy, and all his friends are Asian, and I'm like the only white guy there, which is fine, but whatever. So we go to this club, and I see them eat something, and I was like, "Oh, what was that?" And they're like, "Oh, that's Molly." I was like, "Oh, I've never tried that before." I was like, and if there was a guy to trust, this guy was the guy to trust. So I tried it, started having like a crazy party night with them, and ended up doing some other curriculars, but it was like a storybook scenario for the first time I ever did drugs in my life. Ended up in a penthouse like 10 stories up doing like crazy things off of like mirrored glass tables. And I'm like, wow, I guess this is like the best experience you could have doing this for the first time.
yeah.
But yeah, so that was interesting. So after that, rolled out of there, and I finally made it back to Arizona, the next stop to visit those family friends. And another thing happened while I was home. I met some old buddies of mine, and they were going on this vacation to Punta Cana. And I was like, oh, that sounds cool. I'm like, oh, I'm just traveling. I guess I don't have a timeline. I'm like, I'd go on this vacation. So I made plans to go on this vacation out of Arizona with these buddies of mine to Punta Cana. And I was like, you know what? Once I go on that vacation, I'll come back and then I'll hit the road again, headed for home. So I came back from that vacation while I was in Arizona. I was like I said, these are family friends. And I was like, all right, I'm going to hit the road, so I headed home. Now it's 2015. I don't know if you remember that winter, but it was like the worst winter we ever had in a long time. Remember that one?
No.
It was like, oh man, I wasn't here for it. It was the only winter I wasn't here for in my life. And I guess they were just getting pummeled with snow. So, I told the people I was staying with in Arizona, I was like, oh, yeah, I'm gonna head home. They're like, why would you do that? And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, you're gonna go home to all that snow for what? I was like, yeah, you're right. I'm like, I was like, well, what do you propose? And they're like, just crash here for the winter and, head out in the spring when the snow melts. And I was like, that sounds pretty good. So I end up helping them they had a horse ranch and I end up helping them on the horse ranch. And then, I can't sit still. So I end up getting 2 jobs in Arizona on top of that too. I end up becoming a server at a restaurant, and I actually I started my first mobile mechanic business in Arizona out of my motorcycle. I put it out on Craigslist. Mobile mechanic, like $40 an hour. I'd come to people's houses, work on cars, motorcycles, jet skis.
Wow.
And people would always look at me funny. I was like, hey, because I had plenty of time. I was like, listen, if you're not happy with my work, you don't have to pay me. And like, you know what I mean? And people were like, oh, go for it. And everybody was always happy. You know what I mean? Because I don't know, but yeah. So I had 2 jobs in Arizona on this trip.
Wow.
Yeah.
You
So
can fix things. You're always for hire. You always have a job.
yeah,
You can fix things. So
for real. So hung out during the winter. Kind of had like a little girlfriend I met at that restaurant, which was cool. It's really funny about her. She worked in the back of the house. I worked in the front of the house. And like the last day I was leaving that restaurant, everybody's like, "Oh, you guys like seem like you would be like a cute thing or whatever." Like, and we just laughed. They're like, "Yeah, we've been like dating for months." Nobody knew about it though. It was pretty funny. And she said she used to crash with me on quite a few occasions in that trail. So that trail is pretty tight with 2 people, and I'll say that. um, But you know what was funny? She was like the smallest girl I've ever met in my life, so it was like convenient.
it worked.
She's very short, very like slender girl. So it worked. It was good timing. So anyways, I went to this one other big country thing the night before I left. It was called Country Thunder. That was pretty cool. I don't know if anybody's ever been there, but check that out in Arizona. Now now it's April and I'm like ready to leave again. And I get everything together. I did some more repairs to the bike, never ending repairs on a Harley. Even like swapped out a gear set in the transmission because it was like there was a big fault in the transmission in those years with some keyway thing. And I had time to do it, so I did it.
Right.
Anyways, hit the road, headed. I remember just leaving. It was funny. It was like 75 degrees out when I left Phoenix in April that morning. Got up to God, I can't think of it. What's northern Arizona? Flagstaff. And
Yeah.
that night it was like 35 degrees out.
It's cold.
Yeah, the elevation's
Up in the
crazy.
mountains.
Yeah. Nothing too crazy happened in Flagstaff, except for I did meet these 2 Native American girls and at a bar and I was just hanging out with them. And then like the end of the night came around and I swear they got in like a huge argument, and I think it had something to do with me. And then they both just disappeared. It was like the funniest thing. And I was like, oh, whatever. So, anyways, I headed out of there, went through New Mexico, and then started to go into Oklahoma. And man, Oklahoma, such a windy state. That thing with riding through Oklahoma with the bike and the trailer is where I felt like so much stress on the bike. And the wind was so bad coming, I believe, from the north to the south that I actually had to like pitch the bike into the wind at an angle to get it from like flipping over. It was so bad.
Yeah.
Anyways, riding through Oklahoma and I'm on some back road now, and all of a sudden my bike starts cutting out, like backfiring really bad. I'm like, what the heck's going on now? I pull over to the side of the road. Some random guy pulls up to me in a Jeep and he goes, "Hey, my name's Too Tall. Are you all set?" And I was like, "I don't know, but I'll figure it out." He gave me a business card. He goes, "Well, if you need anything, give me a call." And I was like, "Okay, cool." So I diagnosed it. It was my charging system on the bike now. I'm like, what else can break, right? So I call this guy up. Just met him, and I was like, "Hey, I don't need money. I don't need anything. I just need a driveway to park the bike in to work on it." And he's like, "Sure." He had some like rental property up the street,
Nice.
and just lets me start working on the bike there and drive me around to all these different parts places because nothing. This was like a nothing town, and we had to drive forever to get parts. Wicked nice guy. He was like a millionaire too. He owned a bunch of property. One of the craziest things about him was I stayed in in Arizona, this place called Apache Junction, which is right in front of Superstition Mountain. And this guy had a winter home in Apache Junction, but for some reason this year he didn't go out there. And it was just so crazy that like I was just there. Now I'm in Oklahoma, and this guy owns a house in that same town. So weird. Like the weirdest things happen on the road. So, anyways, um, super nice guy. So I'm putting my bike back together with the charging system, and once again, I heard something else. I thought the motor was tapping or something weird, unrelated to the charging system. And the night before I was ready to get on the road again, the bike was pretty much all back together. I laid in my trailer, and I've never been like a real spiritual / religious guy, but I go, God, if there is a God, you've been so great to me on this trip. It'd be really cool if I could just get home safe and nothing else happened to my motorcycle. I'm like, if you do that for me, I don't know what I can do for you, but whatever. Get up the next day, start the bike up, charging system's good. Still hear this rumbling, tapping noise in my motor. I'm like, I had to work. Like, I'm like, this thing's going to blow up another 500 miles up the road, and I'm going to be putting the bike in the back of a truck and not making it home the same way I came. All of a sudden, I looked at that motor one more time. There was a choke cable rattling on the top of the motor. I took a zip tie and tied it down. I swear that motor sounded perfect after that.
Nice.
And I was like, that was weird. So nothing too crazy happened the rest of the trip. Went all the way down through Texas, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, back up to New Orleans. New Orleans was like the second unsafe city I felt. So unsafe. Cool city on Bourbon Street, but I paid $20 to sleep in a parking garage that night.
Really?
Just because I felt like there was no good place. So I was like, I'll pay $20, park here overnight. At least it's like somewhat secure place.
Yeah.
And then I rolled out of there the next morning. From there, I rolled up to Memphis, Tennessee. And from there, I rolled back to Nashville to meet up with some friends again.
Okay.
And nothing too crazy happened in Nashville again. And then from there, now I was like really making my way back home. And the only thing that was cool, I rolled out of Nashville and went to this. Do you ever hear of the Tail of the Dragon?
Yes,
It's
that's
in
North
Carolina.
Western North Carolina, outside of
that was cool. That was so cool. One guy said I couldn't do it with the trailer, and I needed a new back tire while I was there. And another guy who was doing my tires, like, you'll be fine. He's like, tour buses go on it. I'm like, oh, okay. But it was pretty crazy, but it was cool. Then shot from there over, I think, Richmond. Richmond was my last hotel parking lot I stayed in. That morning was crazy. I got up to leave the parking lot, and I almost got hit by a car that morning. And I was like, oh, this is not a good start to a day. So, and I was like, I'm going to try to make it home for my home from Richmond. It was like 600 and something miles. I'm going to try to make it home. That day, I almost got hit by a car like 3 or 4 times. It was a really rough day of riding for some reason. Yeah. So I get home, and my father like welcome mom's like, happy I'm home. The next morning, all I wanted to do was grab an iced coffee and go hang out with my grandparents and shoot the shit. And this is not like sounds like a country song, but like I let my mother borrow my car. She blew the clutch out in it. My truck at the time had a bunch of flat tires. So I'm like, God, I got to take the motorcycle. I'm like, I just want to like leave the bike alone. I made it home safe, like everything good. Go up the street to get a nice coffee, leave getting a nice coffee. Boom, get hit by a car on the bike.
Oh.
by somebody I knew too from high school.
Oh,
And I'm laying on the ground and like I flipped over the bike. Thank God I was wearing a full face helmet and smashed out the windshield, laying on the ground. And these random people come over, run into me, and like I felt the back of my back was like bleeding, and I was like, I was in shock, but I said to the woman or the guy, I was like, just tell me the truth. Is my spinal cord hanging out? They're like, no, I think you just got some serious scrapes. And I was like, all right, cool. It should be fine then.
yeah.
Whatever. I tell these people this crazy story that I just told you going across the country. They're thinking I'm out of it, right? Like I have a concussion or something, right? And then all of a sudden, randomly, another neighbor comes over that my father knew, and he's followed me on Facebook and all that. He goes, "You're not going to believe it. He just got back from home from this trip and confirmed my story to these people that thought I was out of it."
Man. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
How was the
anyway,
bike?
what?
How was the bike? Was it badly damaged or?
Oh yeah, it was totaled. Yeah. The thing about this accident was I had an iced coffee in my saddlebag. I'm like, I don't want to spill this thing, so I'm not like going crazy. And my grandparents was like a mile or two up the street, not even like a mile. And I was just cruising down the road, and then all of a sudden, this guy took a quick last minute turn into the parking lot on the right and took a left turn. Didn't see me at all and just T-boned me with the front end of his car. So it wasn't even like he just didn't like put a blinker on or anything. But anyways, um, so the only thing I want to add to this is I had a cousin that's pretty spiritual and religious, and I told her the story, the thing about God in Oklahoma, and she goes, "See, this is when I started believing in God." I was like, she's like, "See, that's the thing." I was like, "What do you mean that's the thing?" She's like, "You try to make a deal with God. You can't do that. You just got to like ask him and whatever and be a good person. And he spited you. Could you try to make a deal with him?" And I was like, so ever since then, I thought about that. And I was like, you know what? In life, you should just be a good person and just do the right thing and like not make deals with God. And I felt like I walked away from the accident because he was just showing me that I don't know, it was powerful. Not to get super spiritual or religious, but it's kind of weird in Oklahoma. I didn't think I was going to make it. It's kind of like full circle. But anyways, so I caught up in all my journals recently, and I'm putting all these journals into my computer. And the name of the book I'm writing is going to be called The Traveling Larry, 2 Miles Too Many.
All right, travel married 2 miles too many. All right, that brings it full circle. Wow. Okay.
Because I ended up doing 15,000 miles on the whole trip.
Wow. What advice would you give to people who are considering, going on a similar journey?
So the biggest thing so you're from Connecticut, right?
Yes.
Okay. So if you're from this part of the country, the Northeast, people are a lot nicer everywhere else in the country, or maybe not nicer, but they're easier to talk to. And people are like, have more trust in your fellow man. People are super willing to help. It's really weird. Every time I was in a bind, I felt bad, but people were always willing to help. And it's not like I needed money or anything. It's just so people are nicer than you would think. If you're doing something on a motorcycle, that guy Too Tall told me about this cool book called The Gold Book. And it's for Goldwing members, but anybody can join if you have a motorcycle. And it has 7 tiers in the book of people in the book that would like do anything from like help you work on your bike to let you stay in their house. And they're all fellow motorcycle riders. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. And that's called The Gold Book.
Yeah. So it's called The Gold Book. I think it's like $100 or $50 for the membership. And it comes with free towing too. So pretty cool. So I would recommend that. Don't ride an old Harley. I mean, it adds more excitement to the trip, Yeah. But I don't know. I think people are generally not. I think the biggest thing I was surprised that people are generally nicer everywhere than I ever would have thought.
Yeah. No, I found that to be as well. And, I think it's people appreciate hearing the stories of fellow, travelers and, they know you're not looking for a handout. You're just maybe looking for help. And, for a lot of people, myself included, it feels good to help somebody else. And,
of course. Yeah. I actually do this one thing with my truck repair business. I feel like it's good karma and, everybody helped me. If I see a passenger car on the side of the road and I'm not in a super, super rush, I'll pull over and be like, "Hey, you out of gas?" And then a lot of times people are just out of gas. I'm like,
Wow.
and I always have gas for my air compressor in the truck. So I just give it to them and I'm like, nah, just take it. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's easy. It's, what does it cost? Like
Feel good.
$10 or whatever. But you literally probably save that person like 3 hours of time or something stupid.
You made their day. You made their day
Yeah.
for $100, you know? How else can you do that, you know?
Yeah. So my thing is with the truck repair, it's like, yeah, let me make the money on the people who are making money, right? But help the people out with just like another person, you know.
We need more people like you out there. We really do.
Yeah. If we all just help each other a little bit, the world's a better place. It's nothing, again, like you don't have to go out of your way to kill yourself. It's just do what you can, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's so true. And I hope, people listening in do the same. So if everybody acted that way, it would be a much friendlier place. And anybody out there traveling, be kind to your fellow human beings and they'll be kind back. So
that's right.
So Larry, tell us again your Instagram handle and the name of your book.
So the Instagram is The Traveling Larry, just like it sounds, nothing special. The name of the book again is going to be The Traveling Larry, 2 Miles Too Many. I guess if anyone's listening to this, the next stage of me writing the book is I'd love to find a good editor because, I wrote pretty much word for word anything that happened per day in the book. But, does anybody care that I ate a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? No. You know what I mean? But I need an editor to but maybe there was something that I feel like wasn't that important in my writings, but they're like, oh no, you should elaborate on this more. I don't, you know what I mean? I'm not, it's funny. I'm writing a book, but all the books I've ever listened to are on Audible. So but again, if an editor's listening and finds this story interesting, I'd love to talk to somebody.
Sounds good. All right. Well, Larry, thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for telling us about your travels.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.